Let's talk about your infamous 5 plays. Is that where it developed, where you started rolling that methodology, or out? Is it Office Max?
I think that was the genesis of it. I think it took full flower at Sears. But one of the things that I recognized when I came in is that as I was looking around at what was happening in the organization, you were trying to figure out what their priorities were. And you found throughout the country people thinking that, well, my priority is this, or my priority is working with a store manager to do this, because people confuse partnership with how you provide that partnership, how you provide value to that organization. So it seemed to me that we really needed to be very clear about, what our responsibilities were. How do we add value to the company and to the people, the customers, internal customers and external customers we serve. And that's where we came about with the 5 plays. And everything that we do is around that. And we use that to communicate to the folks we support. So we'll say, we're responsible for shortage control. We're responsible for resolving internal dishonesty. We're responsible for resolving external dishonesty. We're responsible for the safety of the corporation. And wrapped all around that is people. So those are the things that we do. So that it's very clear to everybody in the LP organization. It's very clear to all of the teams that we support what our role is. And then you take that and then you say, okay, that's how I'm going to hold myself accountable. That's how I develop my performance objectives. That's how I develop all of my internal reporting to support those 5 plays.
So you come up with the ideas and the strategy at Office Max, but yet you publicize it at Sears, and it goes into writing. It goes into black and white, so to speak.
Yes.
So let's talk about the transition to Sears. I mean, the huge job, one of the biggest LP departments, in the United States. One of the biggest LP departments, if not in the world. You're coming out of Office Max, TJ Maxx and Wars. Okay, this is the behemoth, one of the behemoths. Okay, what was your approach? I mean, how did you walk in day one, and give us a little feel for that, if you would.
Well, I'll give you that, but let me give you the first thing is that don't forget I spent 14 years at Montgomery Ward's. In Montgomery Ward's and Sears, the executives kind of moved back and forth between there. So there was a lot of similarities in that business and Sears. So when I went in, again, I took 30 days and spent time talking to my customers, talking to the loss prevention team, really trying to understand, what our strategy was, what our priorities were. And then I did something that I hadn't done before, and quite honestly, it opened my eyes. I did a voice of the customer survey. So I sent out to all of the senior executives, all of the peer executives, all of the field organization, and probably 50% of the store manager base. And I asked them a number of questions about how we were serving them, what they would like to see done. It was a pretty extensive survey. Now, I'm not a survey expert, but I know that getting results back on surveys, you get 20, 30%, 40%, you're ecstatic.
Right.
We got 85% back. So it showed that there was a lot of passion around loss prevention, both positive and negative. But that was a great place to start. So we were able to take that information and we built that back into our communication program and went back and said, okay, here are the 5 plays. Here's what we're committing to you that we're going to do.
So that's how you communicated it?
Yes.
After this customer service survey?
Yes.
Internal customer service
right.
survey? And then you developed the 5 steps and communicated it to the entire company?
With the 5 plays, we had a strategy for the coming year, and we said, okay, this is what the 5 plays are going to look like. So for shortage control, here's what the top 3 priorities were, and those we were going to drive like crazy. Here are the people, here's the internal dishonesty, here are the safety things that we're going to drive. And those have 2 different meanings. So for the field organization, there's really one focus. For the corporate organization, you got to support the team, but it's also what are the things that we're going to do up here that's going to help this team drive those results better. So it's involved in training, it's involved in systems and analytics, and all of the safety-related issues that existed within the corporation. So it was really truly effective because it was clear to everybody. Now, doesn't mean that it was it went in without any resistance, because we talked earlier about change management. Well, this is one of the biggest change management focuses that we had to do. And we had to make sure everybody understood why the change, because it goes back to, I felt I was being successful in this role, and now you're saying you're going to change the game on me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty important for us to get done.
And then you had the Kmart merger.
Oh, yes.
Sears and Kmart
Yes.
merging together. So that's certainly been an interesting experience for you, I'm sure. How is the shrink now, if I may ask? I mean, how is the program? How are the troops?
Well, I'm certainly not going to give out the information to
Well,
everybody watching.
absolutely.
But we're very pleased with it. We think we have industry-leading results. And I would just like to say one thing
Please.
about the merger. And, I had been at Sears for 2 years, and then the merger happened. And we were all a little nervous because it's really two different cultures. But I can tell you one thing. I was so impressed with the Kmart organization and what they had done with significantly less resources than what we resourced the Sears organization. They blew me away. So it was an interesting merging of the organizations,
Sure.
and I think very successful.
Good. Well, now let's focus on the NRF Advisory Council work that you did for the 2 years. I mean, to be the chairperson of that certainly had a time commitment to it. It must have taken a heck of a lot of effort on your part. Can you give the viewers an opportunity or a way to see what you did, how you did it, what were those 2 years like, what's involved, what increased workload did you have?
Well, you're right, it takes a time commitment. So the LP executives that volunteer to serve on the LP Advisory Council and those that are in the vice chairs and the chair roles really have to commit time to this organization. And as a chairperson, quite honestly, I work very closely with my two vice chairs, Rosa Maria Sestilio and Gary Johnson, who's now the chairman. And we really met at least once or twice a month via phone to talk about priorities for the council, movement on our committees, what our next steps were. And it really, those three positions, along with the fantastic NRF LP staff, really helped us in, I think, accomplishing a lot of things. But you're right, it takes a lot of time. We had those regular calls. We instituted monthly calls with the advisory team, and the committees provided updates. So I felt that we really started doing a better job of connecting the team and really holding ourselves accountable from moving our committees forward and getting results, and had some fantastic results. There's some great people on those teams.
So how did the recession impact the NRF Advisory Council, so to speak? I mean, it had a heck of an impact on the entire industry, on every human being in the United States, if not the world. How did it impact the LP Advisory Council? What kind of things, pressures did you feel?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we talked about, and probably you on your side felt it also, is that during the recession there was a lot of budget reductions, and it was talking about, how could we do the same with less, or maybe even doing less with less. So there was a lot of conversations around that. Our senior leadership session, took on that in workshops and talking about what can we do, are there better ways to do, sharing best practices, and that's really what brings out the council and the LP profession itself is that we are not bashful about sharing best practices. And I think there were a number of good best practices that came out that helped the industry as a whole.
Absolutely. So what advice do you have for Gary Johnson, the current chairperson of the LP Advisory Council? What if he was sitting here, maybe if the camera was turned off, what advice would you give him?
I'd say, Gary, I'm not going to answer that question. No, honestly, I go back to where we were talking about the vice chairs and myself working together. We were intimately involved, and we had some great discussions around direction and stuff. So, you know what, Gary doesn't need my advice in doing it. It's really interesting, the partnership that goes on between the council members and the NRF. And with Joe LaRocca and now Rich Miller, and I know Joe will still be involved, and Angelica Rodriguez and such, it's just a phenomenal team to work with.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, I'd like to thank you for taking the time today and congratulate you again on your recognition tonight for the chairpersonship, so to speak. But thanks for spending the time with us.
All right, thanks, guys.
And that's it for today's edition of the LP News Network. We'd like to thank Bill for sharing his time with us, and we hope that this session was informative for you. So the next time you're in a store, it's all about the relationships and partnerships you build each and every day. Thanks for listening.